Hey, so impromptu live stream. I don't know if anybody's on, but I thought I would hop on and say hi. Right now, I am crazy reading about the Washington Post and its kind of rise. This year, Meryl Streep starred in the Post about when the Washington Post was trying to decide whether or not to publish what were they called? Pentagon Papers. Sorry, my goodness. It's been a long week. And after watching that movie in Hawaii about a month ago, I picked up Katharine Graham's autobiography, which is quite substantial. Covers both her life and that of her parents and her grandparents and her husband, and how she came to be the first female publisher of a major national newspaper, and how it was through her husband and herself who brought the paper to what it is now. So once I finished reading Katharine Graham's book, I then went and picked up Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein's All the President's Men, because it kind of her book touched on it. But I've been kind of grabbing every book I can find about the Washington Post these days, and I'm just fascinated by Katharine Graham and by her life story. Earlier this year, I read The Women Revolt by Lynn Povich, which was about the women at Newsweek, also owned by the Washington Post Company and also published by Katharine Graham, and when they started fighting for women's rights. And it was interesting to see her Katharine Graham's take on things when she looks back on her life and how she would have handled things like that differently, and how she handled it at the time, and also her perception of what happened versus the perception of the women who were striking for their rights. So it's kind of interesting when you go through this kind of like theme, I guess. It's not really the word I'm looking for, but kind of like you go through a theme of selecting the same sort of books, all covering a similar topic, and in this case, covering the exact same topic. It's interesting to get so many different perspectives on how people viewed what happened, and yeah, so I would fully recommend reading The Women Revolt by Lynn Povich. I would recommend reading Personal History by Katharine Graham. That is a long read, but if you like memoirs, I think you'll really enjoy it, especially if you're interested in recent American history or political history, because she did have a lot to do with politics, being not born, but raised in Washington and living most of her life through the Washington Post. And then to add on to that, All the President's Men, which is the book that Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward wrote after all of the Watergate stuff ended, and how they basically broke the case and what happened from that. I personally really like Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein's writing style. I always find them fascinating when it comes to political writing. I feel like they're still relevant now, but it's interesting to see what their original writing in the 70s was all about. So I highly recommend that if you are interested in that, or you watched The Post and you really liked it for more than just Meryl Streep, then these are books that you might want to pick up. The other thing is, I thought I would talk a little bit about why I have been missing for most of this week. My daughter suffers from an autoimmune disorder, and she had a bit of a setback this past week. And while I was dealing with my daughter, I haven't really been focused that much on posting these book reviews or anything like that. So she seems to be on the mend, and that's why I thought I would hop on and recommend those books regarding Washington Post history. The next book that I plan to read in those lines is The Morning Miracle, and it's about the saving of the Washington Post, because what people don't realize is that for a really long time the Washington Post was not solvent. The only reason that it stayed in existence for as long as it did before the Grahams took over was because Catherine Graham's parents were wealthy and they believed strongly in the paper, and they just kept contributing money to the paper. So for a really long time, it just did not make any money, but that didn't mean it wasn't worthwhile to them to participate in. So I'm interested to read about the financial saving of the Post. This week, we're trying to get things back in order. My new position at my job starts tomorrow, and I will go from writing occasionally to that being my full-time job. So I'm really excited about that. I know I look super excited, right? I am exhausted. As any of you know, if you have a child that is ill, that kind of takes everything for a while. So our precedent, my goal this week was to help my daughter through what she was going through, and it involved a lot less sleep than I would ordinarily enjoy. And I'm really excited for this week to be over. And then we'll start October off to a new foot next week. So if you're not interested in political memoirs or reading every single book ever written about the Washington Post, then maybe these book reviews were not for you, but I will come up with something else for next week. Also, if you have time, we RF Empower and I are hosting our virtual book club, and the virtual book club goes this month. We're talking about Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. All you have to do is log in. If you're curious, please send me direct message and we will add you to the group. It goes through Facebook, but the actual event takes place on Zoom, so you don't have to worry if you don't use Facebook. You can get in touch with me or with RF Empower. That's at symbol RFEMPOW. And we will get you hooked up to join us on the 30th. We are going to be discussing, I think it's 6 p.m. Pacific time, but we can accommodate. So please get in touch with us if you're at all interested. This month, like I said, is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and we would really, really love to have you guys join us to give us your thoughts on the book. All right, well, have a great week. Good luck tomorrow on the last, I think this is the last Monday of September already, believe it or not. And yeah, happy Sunday.